going on from a first, again from a scratch, how to define an Apex class and what are the members that we have inside Apex class, okay? So, let me name my class as sample POC, otherwise, yeah, sample Apex class. Sample Apex class. Yeah. The naming convention, there are two types of naming conventions. Case we follow. One is Pascal case, other one is camel case. The Pascal case means every first letter of a word should be capital, like here, sample Apex. Every word starting letter is a capital. Hold on, just hang. Yep. And here, camel case means the starting letter of a word with the first word should be small, rest follows with a capital. Got it? Yeah. So these are the two different cases that we follow in entire development model. And if you ask me a question like, is this a required thing? No, this is not a required, but this is a good to practice type of things, okay? End of the day, Salesforce is not a case sensitive. You can mention whatever case you needed, but it just helps the readability and I mean, understanding, reading and understanding code is also required. Like tomorrow you build something on today and someone else comes to a picture. By seeing it, the naming conventions, you should be able to judge what is this instead of manually going and looking it. Yeah, best practices. And what are the members that we have in a class? If you consider your class is a simple, your private property or your home compound, the compound wall is nothing but your scope of area, isn't it? The compound wall means inside compound wall is your property. Outside compound wall, it's not your property, right? These flower braces will represents the boundary of a class. These flower braces represents boundary of a class. So inside boundaries, what and all will be having? We will be having a different things. When I say slash star and star slash is a multi-line comment, whatever you write inside this, it will be a commented lines. This is a single line comment. The one I am writing here is a multi-line comment. So what we'll have? We have variables and we have methods and we have constructors. We have inner classes. And technically this also named as wrapper class in Salesforce. The inner classes, we have inner classes which is also named as wrapper class in Salesforce. If someone says a wrapper class is nothing but an inner class of one Apex class. So let's say what are the variables that we have? We have static variables. We have static variables, non-static variables. We have static variables and we have non-static variables. Likewise, methods, static methods, non-static methods. And about constructors, constructor should not have, cannot contain or should not have keyword called static, and likewise should not contain return type. Should contain return type. What is return type? Return type is also nothing but your variable data types. Okay. So when you define anything, right, you need to mention a data type. Hey, what type of data you are trying to hold an information. Okay. Wrapper classes is another Apex class which can contain all these parameters again. Okay. It just repeats inside a class. All you will be having a class. Now, for example, if I define a variable of static variable, static variable, how it looks? You need to define your access specifier. Let's say the variable should contain access specifier and then data type and then static keyword variable name equal to value. Access specifier. What are the access specifiers we have? We have three different types of access specifiers. We have one is not three, four: public, global, private, protected. Public, global, private, protected. Now, for example, if the class is defined as a public, you cannot define your variable as global. Okay. Whatever you define inside class should have equal to this access, or it should not be greater than that. If I define as a global is more open than public. Okay, in this case, can I use global? I cannot use because global is more wider than the public access. So I cannot define a wider access of inside members. If I define my class is global, then I can define my variable as global. If my class is public, you are restricted to use still public, private and protected. Let's say I am using public. What is the data type? What type of data? What are the data types available? String, integer, date, date time, boolean, right? These are the data types, and your Apex class can also be a data type, don't worry. I can also say this is my class data type, okay? My bad. It should be this side. While writing, I can understood. Yep. Your data type, your class name can be data type. Your S objects means your standard object and custom objects can also be a data type. Okay. I can say public static. Instead of data type, I can say account ACC. Now my data type is account. If I define my sample Apex class, then that is a data type. Now for now, I'm using string as my data type. String ACC, otherwise first name equal to okay, and this type of definition is called initialization. The way you are seeing the value, whatever you see, right? This is called initialization. This is called initialization. What is meant by initialization? You create a variable, for that you are assigning a value, right? And we have other factors: public, static, string, last name, and this is called variable declaration. Variable declaration. The default value for this one is null. Default value for this is null. We have other thing: public static string title equal to, now variable initialize but blank value. Null and blank are not same. You agree or not? Null and blank is not same. This is null where it doesn't have a memory. Here it have a memory, but inside memory the value is blank. Right? And likewise, what is the other way that we can define? Public static string email equal to null. Variable initialize but null. It have a memory. Now you are saying even though it have a memory, inside memory we are keeping as a null instead of a blank. We are just keeping as a null. Okay. These two things having a memory, here in memory it have a blank value, in the memory of a cloud it have a null value. Here we are not even created a memory. That's the only difference. For this null value, because of no memory, here you have a memory, but why? Okay, semicolon is missing, my bad. Here also I am missing my semicolon. Yep. Cool. Because these are static members and these are public. If we want to access a variable outside of these boundaries, when I say outside of these boundaries, from any other class, right? From any other places, not from this class. Yeah, from any other places. Because these are static members, how can you call? The question is, okay, how can you call how to access the static variables outside of a class? This is the question, right? Now to access outside of a class, because these are static variables, you need to access by its class name, dot variable name, which looks like class name dot your variable name. Class name dot variable name. Why? Because these are a static variables. Right? So what if I want to define as a non-static? Non-static, I am doing copy paste. See, for your understanding, it's not a big difference. Instead of static, I'll take off my static keyword and I'll rename as a non-static. First name non. I'm just adding non at top. Okay. At last, I'm adding a non, keeping everything intact. How to access non-static variables outside of a class? So then, class name object name equal to new constructor. Then object name dot variable name. Object name called variable name. Oh, sorry. Why we had a constructor now? Constructor is helping you to create an object of a class, right? Here what is constructor is doing? Constructor is helping to create a object to a class. Let's say here do we have any constructors defined? No, right? We never define any constructor. We just define some variables only. But how constructor will come? If you don't define a constructor by your own, then a Apex code compiler will create one constructor for you. That is called default constructor. Okay? If you don't define a constructor within the scope of a class, if you don't define a constructor within the scope of a class, then Apex code compiler will create a default constructor on the execution. Okay? That's where this is coming up. This is called default constructor. Let's take a look at it. Let's take a look at it. As I said, how to call this first name? Let's say string static value equal to, how to call a static members? You need to call by its class name. Sample Apex class dot first name. To see a out statement, we in Salesforce we have system.debug. In system.debug, you can say static value plus static value. If I want to call non-static value, then I'll say string. This is just I'm doing. You can directly call the statement within here, but I'm just creating for a readability. Okay. How to call a non-static value? First, we need to create an object, right? Sample Apex class obj equal to new. Constructor name always looks like a class name. Okay. Constructor name and class name should be same. Clear? This is class name, this is constructor. That's what I wrote in the code. It's not something like class name, open brackets. This is your class, this is your constructor. Okay? It have its own differences. Let's not confuse. Clear? Obj dot first name non and then system dot debug non-static value now I'm executing it. Okay, ensure that you checked this checkbox open log, then only you will see this debug statements. Static field cannot be referenced from non-static. Oh, sorry, I need to take off. My bad. Because I made comments, but I never made any changes to the variables. No static keyword. That's what here you can see in the code. What we are saying? Access specifier, data type, variable name, value, right? Now execute. Debug only. You can see static value, non-static value, right? So it means you are able to access it, right? Clear? Any questions? Yeah. 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 Object name. Here it is matching object name. Whatever I defined here, I need to use that. Yeah. And this is the only way that you can able to access. There is no other alternative ways. These are the calling steps. That's it. These are the only two different ways that you can invoke two different things. Okay. While in the declaration, while in initialization, you have a different things, but in the calling statement, this is how exactly you will call. No other ways, no alternatives. And here, no alternatives. Once I create an object, next I say object dot last name none, object obj dot title none, obj dot email none. I can use this only one object that I can call every non-static. With a class name, I can call all my statics. Clear?